If we look at the recent years of Disney, they have been struggling quite a bit. Like, for example, with Marvel, since Endgame, they haven't been able to get people interested in these new phases. With Lucasfilm and Star Wars in particular, they failed to really set that direction in place for these new stories, and so people have dropped off. But something eventually was going to come and stop the rot, and that does come from one of their most trusted studios in Pixar with Inside Out 2. Because as we can see here, Inside Out 2 has now officially entered a very exclusive list, and that is it has now become one of the top 10 Disney movies at the US box office. Also, by the time you're watching this video, Inside Out 2 would have surpassed Incredibles 2 by being now the highest grossing Pixar film of all time. Currently, Inside Out 2's worldwide box office is around $1.2 billion, which is pretty extraordinary. It will continue to rise as well until it finally does end its theatrical run, but it's now also facing a bit of competition because Despicable Me 4 is out in the UK this week actually, and also in other regions. It's already out in America, so some of those seats have already started to split between the two films. And I think obviously Despicable Me 4 will do well because those films have such a worldwide appeal. But Inside Out 2, I don't think Pixar ever thought it was going to do this well. I thought, the first film was a very good movie, but, I don't think they thought that they could maybe replicate it and really have such a success here, especially in the climate, the post-COVID climate, with a film like this. But I think it's come out just at a perfect time. Because before Inside Out 2 came out, we had Garfield and that family film called If, but then it came in unopposed and had a bit of a slot all to itself. Of course, for any successful film at the box office, something had to go right in terms of the quality of the film, and I think for Inside Out 2, it was a very solid sequel. It built on from that original film. It added some new emotions, with anxiety being the big one, I think, because that's so much more now in the world in terms of social media. It's much more talked about these days than it was in the past. And so a lot more people relate to that emotion in particular, as well as the other ones as well. But that one, I feel like, would have got people wanting to see the film more eagerly because they saw in that first film how well they laid out emotions and simplified things for kids and for families to enjoy. And so to see these sort of a bit more, complex emotions being given this treatment as well, I think had a big appeal. When we look at Pixar in the past, there have been sequels, like with Toy Story, which has had the most success. The Cars films, we've had about 3 of them now. But then we look at films like Incredibles 2 and Finding Dory and Monsters University as a prequel, which are all good in their own right, but nowhere near the actual quality of those original films they stem from. I do now think they might look at some of their other original films and think, oh, maybe we could do a Bug's Life 2 and all these other things, but I don't think a Bug's Life, for example, will have that appeal for people to want to see a sequel for that film. Inside Out had that. It's still fairly recent as well. I know it's about 9 years ago now, which feels unbelievably long, but it's still recent enough for the generation who watched it to still be interested to watch the sequel and also get the new generation involved as well. And one of the great things about Inside Out is that it can appeal to any demographic. So if you're a 90-year-old grandmother or a 14-year-old teenage boy, it doesn't matter because you can relate to it. Like, it follows Riley as that character, but she's having these experiences that we all have. And Pixar have that freedom to expand this story however they want, really. And Disney will love that because that means more money in the pocket, because more things they can make, whether that be a Disney Plus series or also with the films, because they can take Riley into these different directions. Like, one direction could be we focus a story about her getting into a relationship, so we have all the different feelings, the sparks flying or the butterflies. You can sort of see that being visualized on screen with what they've done here already with the first 2 films. And that can go further into marriage or when she has kids, a bit like the Andy story where we can follow her all the way into when we then eventually maybe follow her kids. Likewise, they can move away from Riley and take the story elsewhere. But I think for now they'll want her for those core films. Maybe they'll do up to like 5, for example, and then maybe give it a little break and then come back later on doing something else. I just hope Disney don't look at this and think, let's milk the crap out of it, because they could easily think that. And I think one of the best things with Pixar is that they don't do that. They try to keep things a bit more contained. I think they have done a little bit of Toy Story because they're doing another Toy Story film, and that trilogy was so solid. But I do hope that Disney don't look at this and think, let's just make all Disney Plus shows, let's make all different films, because it just loses a bit of its special feeling when you do that. Now, I actually haven't reviewed Inside Out 2 on the channel, but I thought it was a very solid sequel. Not as good as that first film, because that first film was just so perfect, but this film did tell a great story with these new emotions like anxiety and envy and that. And I think the score was really well used. It was used sparingly because it had a very iconic theme, which could have just been put in there to be like, oh yeah, it's nostalgic for that first film. But they used it sparingly in these sort of emotional scenes to sort of give them a bit more oomph, to make you maybe a bit more likely to cry. And as we've seen with Pixar in the past, they do like to pull at those heartstrings. And if we just look at Inside Out on a very basic level, it's incredibly colourful. I mean, just look at this picture here. All these different colours, these different characters, they're great for things like merch. And so I think they have such a winner here, Disney and Pixar, with Inside Out. It's now just how they take it going forward, how they use this momentum, how they use this positive news and this box office result they're going to get with how they shape the future of this series. And as we can see from this article from Variety, Inside Out 2 has led the UK and Ireland box office for the 4th consecutive weekend and has now surpassed Dune Part 2 to become the year's highest grossing film in this region. And it's also surpassed the lifetime box office of Inside Out, the original film from 2015. So yeah, I have to admit, if I was a bit doubtful on the success of Inside Out 2, I thought it would always do quite well at the box office, but I didn't think the quality of the film would reach those heights as it has done. So well done to the film for that, because, after the other Pixar sequels, I thought it might just follow suit, but it hasn't. But of course, I would like to know your thoughts on this movie. Like I said, I thought it was a very solid sequel. I don't want to speak too much about it because there's some great sort of reveals in the film, which I think are worth finding out for yourself. But I will say they did really tackle something in terms of anxiety, especially towards the end of the film, really well. They really showed something great there. But yeah, of course, let me know your thoughts on the movie. I'd like to know, do you think it's better than the first film? Is this one of your favorite Pixar sequels? Just let me know all those thoughts down below. And where do you think this film will rank in terms of box office success? Do you think this will keep its #1 spot for a long time? Or do you think there'll be another Pixar film on the way which will knock it off top spot? Also, just a little question in regards to this channel, because most of my videos are 100% voiceover, but here I did do a little bit of a mixture with voiceover and myself on camera showing my mug. So let me know, do you think I should do more of this, or would you rather just go back to the 100% voiceover? Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and if you'd like to watch another one on screen or a couple of my recent reviews.